Hello, World Trade Center Institute, Women Spanning the Globe. I'm so excited to connect with you. My name is Stacy Stube, and I am the director of the Radcliffe Center for Creative Entrepreneurship at the Maryland Institute College of Art. I'm also the founder of BROMO, a fashion education incubator. The focus of this talk will be on creative entrepreneurship and social innovation with a look into impact-driven venture creation. I have been working in the luxury fashion industry for over 20 years between the US, Europe, and Asia. I completed my master's at the University of Arts London in fashion entrepreneurship and innovation on a joint program with London Business School, New Creative Ventures. I then went on to work on a second master's in nonprofit management and social entrepreneurship, and am currently applying for my PhD in creative and cultural entrepreneurship. I've also received various awards within the social impact space and have been a part of various accelerators to include Johns Hopkins Social Innovation Lab, Halcyon, and among others. I don't know if you know, but the Maryland Institute College of Art is one of the oldest continuously degree-granting colleges of art, College of Art in the United States. So it's very unique that it's based here in Maryland, but also in 2026, it will be celebrating its 200-year anniversary. My role within the university in the Entrepreneurship Center is really to translate the artist's creative practice into enterprise, helping them navigate that passion and practice and allowing it to be their kind of focus in creating pathways for opportunity for themselves and their communities. Here we have Angela McQuillan from Chimera Gallery. She went on to build a bio-art gallery that is now thriving in Philadelphia. I also want to note that the venture space, the entrepreneurship center space, really doesn't make way for the creative ventures, and they feel not included. And so we've been working with a lot of different programs to really reimagine and restructure programming in order to connect with the authenticity of a creative who is building impact within their communities without the compromise of other values. And so their fear is that they don't want to become a capitalist. So our goal is to really help them translate what it means to create change and impact through the ventures they form. I really had to think through how do we teach these sort of systems, and in preparation for our conference for Society for Arts Entrepreneurship Education, I really mapped out a system that I wish I had back in school when I was trying to navigate this journey. And CENOV is a creative entrepreneurship innovation lab that we've developed in the Baltimore Innovation Center to work with creatives to launch their ventures. And so this is a framework that has won awards. It's now traveling around the globe and really becoming a system to help artists translate their impact aligned with their values, and obviously building a financial model that is viable and thriving. I won't go into this just yet. We'll do this towards the tail end. I want you to know a bit more about my background, and I'm really always questioning the students and just the world, people who care about things that matter to the core of the person, to really think about what impact do you want to cultivate in the world and how are you going to do that. My journey, started in Indonesia, then in Baltimore, then in London, and then eventually Bali, then Baltimore again. So I've really gone across around the globe and really brought a passion and a practice for impact-driven fashion entrepreneurship. In this middle image, you'll see a bit of the work where we were able to reactivate the needle trades of Baltimore. So the garment industry in Baltimore became dormant in the 1950s to 70s, and we were able to convert an abandoned garment factory into an entire needle trades district. I also want to advocate for your fine arts practice to keep that alive and translate that for your own enjoyment, but also potentially for creative enterprise. And then on the left, we were featured in Women's Wear Daily for our work in establishing and expanding the Fashion Innovation Hub. I want to go back to being a student at the University of Baltimore, studying on that second master's in nonprofit management and social entrepreneurship. I had these big dreams and ideas, actually had a lot of industry background, but I realized that there is a way that we can do fashion or create fashion that is kind. I'm actually wearing one of my dresses that I designed, developed, and pre-sold that went around the world, from everywhere from Hong Kong, London, Paris, Canada, Australia. But when I came back to Baltimore, I really wanted to form a Baltimore fashion renaissance. And so I started in an artist studio in the BROMO Seltzer Tower, and I really try to think about how do we bring the community together in a conversation around impact and change. Eventually ended up moving on to form the BROMO, the Fashion Education Incubator, and working with other impact-driven founders to move the needle forward for today's makers. These are some of the fashion houses and organizations that I have been affiliated with and worked with during the years. But when I did come back to Baltimore, I was wearing dresses that I had designed and developed in Bali, Indonesia, and I really wanted to create those sewing jobs in my hometown of Baltimore. But it wasn't as easy as I thought it would be, and I ended up connecting with Nicole Myrick at Belvedere Terrace Atelier to figure out what that might look like. I also ended up working for one of the last garment factories in the original industry. Yeah, I think you might be surprised if you're a Baltimore native to know that, one, we once had an industry, and number two, that there are still fragments of that industry that exist. And I want you to note this person that's here on this tour I hosted with the Baltimore Heritage Society, because I really want to highlight the power of enterprise, but enterprise that might not be seen nor accessible to those not coming from the industry. So I was working at this garment factory, and my colleagues were dying suddenly. One died of liver failure, the other died of a heart attack. And these were legends of industry. And I sat down with the owner of the factory trying to find out what we can do about that. And then I found out that we have this beautiful heritage fashion collection at the Maryland Historical Society, and sort of felt a little bit disillusioned that fashion was sort of fading into a history. And then started tracing back to the origins of the industry. And so trying to find where are the remnants of industry, where can I find it? And then I found the Baltimore Museum of Industry, where they had the garment loft, and again, remnants of industry, and a dress isn't even allowed to be sewn there. I mean, it's a garment loft. So I asked if I could hand sew this dress as the entrepreneur in residence in their place, and I made this dress. I met with legends of industry, Sally DeMarco. There were immigrants that came to Baltimore and helped to actually put Baltimore on the map. Moving on, I ended up connecting with more and more individuals. Calvin on the left, Victor Colvin on the right, sewing machine, a heritage sewing machine collector. We were able to even shift the search engine images that were coming up. You know, you were actually starting to see Baltimore's garment industry on the internet, which sounds silly, but it's very important. So when we had this moment to reactivate a garment factory, it was actually at a moment when I had been fired from that garment factory that I was working for and advocating for, that was located on the 5th floor of this building. And then I was just angry and excited to think about what could I do? What could I do if the owner of this factory isn't going to do anything about the transformation and the translation and the kind of the passing of the baton for that next generation? So I decided to get together with Nicole Myrick, and she developed running gear that was designed, developed, and made in Baltimore. And I said I would run 200 miles in 8 days in order to reactivate our needle trades. We rolled in this little sewing machine, and we were wanting to keep sewing machines singing in Baltimore, but that was going to come at a cost. And so we brought my mentor, Vincent Kwan from New York, and he came over and said, you could do what New York did. They were able to cluster the industry, and he really cheerleaded this work on and advised. Then we had Sally DeMarco, you know, wanting to see her family's legacy in the trades come alive and be able to move on and keep growing. Then we had donors and supporters of this campaign that had contributed to the campaign in order to fund this work. So we were able to successfully not receive all the funding we need, but to activate this space and the industry. And so just as a note, we were able to start first in the artist studios with exhibitions, talks. Then I ran the 200 miles. We started creating education that was then available for all. We were then featured on the front cover of the Baltimore Business Journal, along all the different ventures that were then incubating in that space. Something to note is that these people were coming out of the woodwork. They found out that we were fighting for the industry, and then the industry showed itself. And so they started to cluster in workspaces around that floor. And this is an image of that old garment factory that I used to work for. And I was really thinking, well, could it look different? Could the factory look different? The factory concept, the needle trade concept look different? Could it be led by impact-driven entrepreneurs? Could they kind of move away from that kind of slave labor system and to something that is more empowering for the individual? And that we found individuals really wanting to learn this skill set that was really fading in time, but they wanted to learn on an industrial level. They wanted to learn the quality craftsmanship processes. And we had people traveling from various states in order to take classes to build their businesses, but wanting to be the ones sewing and the ones creating their garments. We had our support system of veterans of the needle trades like Mr. Hardy, who were cheering us on and saying that, you know, you're shedding light on an industry that has been here, but potentially has been in the shadows. We then moved on to work with these impact-driven fashion ventures to get funding through venture competitions to pre-sell their lines. As an example, we have a NASA rocket scientist who then was able to pre-sell the flight suit, $80,000 in 1 month, that then was moved on to be cut, sewn, and made right in Baltimore. And so that lady, I don't know if you recall, in the earlier part of the presentation, she was not supported by the industry in terms of from the entrepreneurship lens. I was working at the factory when the factory owner said, no, we're not taking that account. But in time, I was able to advocate for her in that factory, but she needed more support. So when she began to grow Susan Clayton from White Paws Run Mitts, we then had to work through the margins, the packaging, and all those elements of then going into mainline retailer. She went from 4 REI stores to 80 REI stores nationwide. So it's an outdoor clothing company. And this is the space here. And actually, if you look towards that back wall, those are the images of the Baltimore Fashion Renaissance, the original campaign, the original work with artists and creatives. And now the work has really circled the globe with the support of the World Trade Center Institute, where women from around the globe, up on the upper left, from 22 countries came to visit the space and really going to be a part of a next wave of global impact-driven entrepreneurship. So our next step is to not only work with impact-driven fashion founders, but it's really to create a fashion innovation hub ecosystem map that is going to be starting with the individuals that had come to visit us here in Baltimore and helping them ecosystem map their fashion innovation hubs around the globe so that there is a connecting line between these entrepreneurs in Baltimore through a cultural a knowledge exchange through entrepreneurship. And so we have Warren Savage, who's a third-generation Baltimore upholsterer. You have all these individuals who are trying to reimagine the industry, but they really need to kind of come together to be given a platform to speak. And this is Mr. Hardy, whose work has expanded, and we keep expanding the square footage of our needle trades. And so this is the Creative Entrepreneurship Innovation Trail Map that I have created in order to support founders to figure out how they can identify their value, how they can untangle some of that riddle around impact, and how they build that financially modeling around that, and in order to create a creative entrepreneurship sort of launch activities for their pilots. We will be sharing more around these sort of frameworks and systems in Micah's upcoming conference, but I do want to let you know that the biggest important message I do want you to know and to kind of carry with you is to keep your creativity alive through enterprise. If we can have entrepreneurs that are alive and well and excited and passionate, building businesses that are transforming our city, what kind of world can we form as a collective community? All right. Well, I'd love to invite you to our Creative Entrepreneurship Social Innovation Conference at the Maryland Institute College of Art for October 10th and 11th. And here are the details where you can reach me at the Maryland Institute College of Art and also at BROMO. I wish you a wonderful, inspiring day.